We're interested in solving this problem using matrix equation. So as you can see, you have 1, 2, 3 equations in 3 variables. Ax equals to b is going to be just the coefficient matrix multiplied by column matrix x1, x2, x3, which represents all the variables here. And on the right-hand side of the equation, you're going to have another column matrix, which is basically the constant terms. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to just basically construct the augmented matrix and apply elementary row operations and write it in reduced row echelon form. So this is the augmented matrix. 1, -1, 2, -2, 3, -5, 3, -1, 5, and then you have 9, -6, and 17. This is going to be your final answer, but what are the steps? On the exam, on the homework, if somebody asks you to write down every little step, to write this in reduced row echelon form, what is the very first step? You're going to look for the pivot element. It is 1. Everything below 1 must be equal to 0, all right? But it's not. So what you can do, you can basically add the first row and the second row. This guy becomes 0, you have a 1, you have a 2, and you have a 3. Basically, this is going to be your new second row. You can multiply the first row by -2 and add it to the last row as well. So -2 times the first row plus the last row. This guy becomes 0, then it's -1, then it is -1, and also you have a -1, which is basically your last row, new last row. In the next step, you're going to identify where your pivot, next pivot is. This is 1. Everything below 1 and everything above 1 must be equal to 0, all right? You can also take a look at your pivot here. This is a 1, and everything above 1 must be equal to 0, so you have it in reduced row echelon form. So let's take a look. What are we going to do? We can multiply the last row by -2 and add it to the second row. So here, these two are zeros. So if you multiply them by any number and add them here, it doesn't change 0 and 1. But if you multiply 1 by -2 and add it here, it becomes 0. Multiply by -2 and add it to 3, it becomes -1. So this is going to be your new second row. What you can also do, you can multiply this row by -3 and add it to the first row. Or you could just take this and multiply it by 2, the second row, and add it to the first row. So basically, we multiply the second row by 2 and add it to the first row. It becomes 1, 0, 3, and 7. At this step, you can take a look at your pivot down here. Everything above 1 must be equal to 0. So you need to multiply the last row by -3 and add it to the first row. So basically create this matrix in reduced row echelon form, which is super easy to solve. This says, hey, 1 times x1 is 1. 1 times x2 is -1, and 1 times x3 is equal to 2. So it means that the system that you have has a unique solution, and the system is consistent. These 3 planes intersect at this specific